It is October 11th, 2022. It's Tuesday. We are at the Board of Directors meeting of the Redevelopment Agency of Salt Lake City. We welcome all of you guys here and those that are online. And to keep everybody healthy and safe, we continue to host hybrid RDA meetings. Our meetings are public, and you're welcome to join us in person or by watching from the City Council's agenda page, Facebook, YouTube, or SLC TV. We hope you'll continue to join us in whichever manner you feel more comfortable or most comfortable. We're at Section A, and we begin our meeting with comments to the board. And I'd like to remind you that written comments may be submitted to RDA offices via mail to P.O. Box 145476, Salt Lake City, Utah 84114, or emailing us at council.comments@slcgov.com, or by calling our 24-hour phone comment line at 801-535-7654. We're accepting your comments in person and through WebEx. And for those whose only option is to call in, staff will be monitoring a separate telephone line. I want to mention our rules of the quorum. These are guidelines to help our meeting progress in an orderly, civil, efficient way. We want to give everyone the opportunity to voice their opinions without feeling intimidated. In order to achieve this, our rules of the quorum begin from the moment you arrive in person or into our virtual meeting. The RDA board respects all points of view, and we welcome new insights. Please be respectful. Avoid yelling, profanity, or making racial slurs, obscene, or defamatory remarks. If you violate this rule, your line will be muted or you will be asked to stop. If you feel you need to use profanity or disrespectful remarks to express your point, you're welcome to email board members or call our comment line. In addition, our staff will request your name during the WebEx registration process. To limit disruption, your name cannot include a message or violate our rules of the quorum. If your name doesn't meet this requirement, then our staff will make contact with you to gather that information. For those joining in WebEx, please monitor your chat in case we try to reach you. Scott Corpani from our staff is helping to moderate the meeting and will be messaging with the attendees to coordinate on any questions we are commenting registration. Staff is handling a number of tasks. Please limit messages to technical issues and minimal changes to your registration. Taylor Hill on our staff will be calling the names of those who wish to comment. We will call names of people joining on WebEx and in person based on the order of registration or received comment cards. When it is your turn to speak, Taylor will announce your name. And for people in WebEx, she will unmute your line and you may begin. For people in person, please step up to the podium, and if you have a mask, please feel free to remove it before making a comment. Once you begin, please state your name and the 2-minute timer will start. We will now open our general comment period. Taylor, please start with our first comment. All right. Thank you, Dorothy, for those comments. Are there any other comments in person or online? So we have no public hearings today, so we're moving on to item C1. And this is the approval of minutes of the meeting minutes of June 15th, 2021. We'll have a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes of that date that you just said.
June 15th, 2021.
June
Second.
15th, 2021.
Second.
Right, I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from Board Member Fowler, seconded by Board Member Dugan. And I'm going to roll call. Fowler?
Yes.
Wharton? Yes. Pui?
Yes.
Dugan?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And I'm not sure if Board Member Petra is here or Mano. No?
Board Member Mono is not able to join us, and also Councilmember Petra Eschler is in a conflicting port meeting right now. So
Okay.
we'll see Councilmember Petra Eschler in a while.
Okay. All right. So that passes 5-0 with 2 absentees. We're moving on to item C2, and it's a resolution. It's the RDA Budget Amendment number 2 for fiscal year 2022-23. And at the table, we have Ben Lutke, which is our Budget and Policy Analyst, Danny Walls, the RDA Director, Eric Cunningham, Financial Analyst, and Mary Beth Thompson, the Chief Financial Officer. Welcome.
Thanks, Madam Chair. This is the first briefing for RDA Budget Amendment number 2. There are 4 items, one of which is board added. The total expenditures are slightly over $5.5 million, and this would impact several project areas and funds. And a note at the end of the staff report, there are project area expiration dates, as well as allowable uses of agency funds, in case the reference is helpful, since those questions often come up. The first item is a $4 million gap loan for Spark project. This is the former Overnighter Motel, 1500 West North Temple. The board had a briefing last month at the September meeting where the seller's note was approved for the land disposition, and a unanimous straw poll was taken in support of this loan. So this is the follow-up item that you already discussed at the last meeting. And the funding sources are threefold. I thought it'd be helpful to put this up on the big screen, and it's already there. Thank you, Scott. You can see the total amount is in the requested column. This is second from the right. So it's taking $1.5 million from property acquisition in the housing fund, which would leave $99,000 left. Another $1.5 million from the North Temple Strategic Intervention Fund, which would still have a balance of $1.4 million for future opportunities in the area. And last is the Housing Development Loan Fund. So $1 million from that account. So there would still be $6 million for the NOFA this fall. If this item is approved, the total financial contribution from the agency going to this development project is almost $14.5 million. The next item is a request for almost $47,000 from the RDA administration budget's fund balance. It has its own separate fund balance for market-based salary adjustments for non-represented employees. You may remember this from a recent budget amendment because the same thing happened for the airport, and this was also included in the annual budget for general fund employees. There was a salary study done that looked at non-represented employees' current salaries compared to market to ensure they would be competitive to support retention, hiring of employees. The results were not available in time for some enterprise fund budget developments earlier in the year. That's why this is appearing in a budget amendment, and the same thing happened for the airport. And a note that the adjustments are for 9 months of this fiscal year, so they begin this month moving forward. This was the same for general fund employees. That takes us to a request for $500,000 for the RDA to take on a station center consultant contract to create a vision and implementation plan. This contract is currently held by the University of Utah, and this funding would allow the contract to be transferred to the RDA, as well as revising the scope of work so that some of the deliverables would be specific to the RDA's priorities. The current scope of work has some items specific to the University of Utah that wouldn't be needed if it's transferred to the RDA. There are two funding sources that would be equally split for the $500,000. $250,000 from the Station Center public infrastructure budget. It's estimated about $15 million would be needed for all of the public improvements in Station Center. Taking this additional $250,000 out, there'd be about a $9.5 million gap. And we can talk about ways to fund that, but the study would also look at ways to fund that. The other $250,000 would come from the Central Station improvements budget. And there's two maps in the staff report, and I'll ask Scott to go through them on the big screen real quick, because Central Station and Station Center are different, and they're next to each other. So I thought a visual would be helpful. These are on pages 3 and 4 of the staff report. So Station Center between 200 and 400 South and 500 and 600 West. And it's sandwiched on either side by the Rio Grande Depot and the UTA Intermodal Hub and UTA headquarters. So if we then zoom out and go to the second map, it shows Central Station. And this is a mix of properties owned by UTA and the RDA. The RDA's properties are focused on 100 South between I-15 and 600 West. It's the parcel that kind of looks like a shark fin. And then the two squares below it and the one above it have multiple UTA properties. So there's a lot of property in West Downtown that this transferred contract would seek to coordinate between the different public agencies for redevelopment of the sites. The revised scope of work has several items, A through H. And Scott, if you can put those up on the screen, I thought it'd be helpful to have those available. There's a few policy questions. If you wanted to review the individual items in the scope of work before approving this item, of course, this is not up for a vote today, so there's time if you want to look into it after the meeting. Based on some recent board discussions, we thought there might be interest in adding a ground lease development scenario option explicitly in the revised scope of work. It is possibly reflected or implied in some of the items that are there, but given how many times ground leasing has come up as an interest, we thought maybe you want to explicitly have that as a development scenario. And the last policy question is the consultants did conduct some initial work under the contract, and we could probably get a list of which stakeholders they reached out to. So if the board had additional persons or organizations you wanted to recommend, they could be passed on to the consultants for the next phase of work. If there's no questions, there's one more item.
I was thinking of doing the questions after you're done.
Okay.
Yes, that's okay. Yep, thanks.
The last item, this is a follow-up item to return funding, $720,000 to the revolving loan fund and $280,000 to the Arctic Court infill home holding account. In the general fund budget amendment number 3, the council approved $1 million of parks impact fees for the Marmalade Plaza project. The funding that's being returned to the two accounts was approved in an earlier RDA budget amendment so that there was full funding available to sign the construction contract because of the time-limited bid offerings. So when this funding goes back, there will still be $3.9 million for the Marmalade Plaza project. There's a table breaking down the 4 funding sources in the staff report. Parks impact fees are the largest funding source. And I thought it was worth pointing out that the Arctic Court infill home previously had $338,000 that was transferred to this project. So the policy question is, if the project is completed under budget, the board may be interested in directing that funding to go back to the Arctic Court infill home, since the last discussion the board identified that as a priority project that you wanted to fully fund in the future. But we won't know if funding is left until the project is completed. That's it, Madam Chair.
All right, well, thank you. Opening up to questions, comments. We have 4 items that were presented to us, so Dugan?
Councilmember, yes, I just go back to your policy questions, and yeah, I'd like to get some answers on that, and I do want to make sure that we follow up on the idea of the ground lease. I know we had that discussion, but I'd like to more formalize putting that in the plan.
Okay.
And then just one more question on the impact fees. You know, they always have a expiration date. On these fees, what is the expiration date on this 2.1? Is it coming up soon, or is it like 4 years later?
So 6 years is the clock. If we don't spend them in 6, they have to be refunded with interest. Last I checked, I think it was 3 years from now. So we have a good amount of time, but that can creep up on us.
Right, and remind me, is that 3 years from spending, or 3 years from allocating or contracting it? Do we have to actually write them a check for that money, or so we have to actually spend it?
Yeah.
Not appropriate it in that case.
Correct.
Gotcha.
It has to be encumbered under a contract. So it's spent.
Has to be spent, not encumbered. Correct.
Yeah.
But remember that it is a waterfall approach, so impact fees are difficult to understand a little bit, so the revenue comes in. If we spend it someplace else, it's not by project. If we're spending someplace else faster than we're going to spend this funding, then it just gives us more time to spend this funding. It's a first in, first out waterfall approach on the revenue side. It's a little bit different than other types of revenue sources.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
can I suggest a straw poll that we change one of the names of these project areas? You can pick what the name is, but this is ridiculous.
Come on.
Taken under advisement, yes, we will. I was not prepared to answer that question today, I can seriously say that, but we will work on that.
All right. I have just a comment. Yes, on the station center, that study, yeah, I would like to see who was contacted before, like whatever they were working on, and then what we get in return if we're going to invest this much on a study is to look at it not only as a station center, as a redevelopment area, but also as an economic engine or an area of the city that affects beyond just the RDA area, but also our general budget and future growth and future needs for public safety and for infrastructure. And, you know, I would like to understand this 8 acres, what it could be, and what's the impact, in our city, and so that we know what's the best, option out there for us. Is it leasing and holding on to the property, or is it selling so we could pay for other things, but et cetera, et cetera. So I'm excited to look at this study, a very comprehensive one. And also, I think at a small group meeting, we talked about almost like an implementation plan. Like, we don't want just an idea and a concept of what could be. We want to have options for this board to make decisions and start implementing as soon as possible this acres, because it's been sitting there for quite some time. And then that's my only comment. Anybody else? Okay. All right, I guess we're moving on from item 2 to item 3. Thank you for those that presented. We are item 3, which is informational on the accessory dwelling unit financing program. And at the table, we'll have Allison Rowland, Council Office Analyst, Austin Taylor, RDA Project Manager, and Lauren Parisi, RDA Project Manager. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. There is just a memo from council staff on this item. It is about, as you mentioned, the ADU financing proposal that the RDA is working on. There is one RDA staff policy question, which is whether the board is interested in deed restricting ADUs that are part of this financing project to ensure affordability for low-income renters. I added a couple other council staff questions in the memo, including that the current amount of RDA funding is $394,000 in the housing account of the RDA, so that would cover about 7 projects at $50,000 each if that were the financing amount. So just to give you a ballpark, the board may wish to think about that as well. Every spring you allocate the amount of money in the different housing funds, but of course you have discretion to move those amounts around anytime that makes sense to you. The other question, I think, touches back on the discussions that some of you have had with the consultants for the Thriving in Place study and how this ADU financing or any ADU financing program might fit into that framework. So there is, and also in the memo, there's some additional information from RDA staff, but I will turn it over to Lauren and Austin for the rest of the briefing.
Thanks, Allison. So like she said, today we want to talk to you about a ADU financing program that we're looking at. We want to get your input so that as we put together a request for qualifications and potentially partner with another group, that we can bring back to you a program that's going to be something that you'd like to see. So today is informational, and we want to get your feedback on how you think this program should be put together. So let's go to the next slide. So I want you guys to guess, fill in the blank here. I was talking with some different ADU builders, and one of them told me this quote. They said, blank is currently the biggest hurdle to ADU construction that we are facing. What word do you think goes there?
Mad Libs.
I don't want to say it.
I mean, I think cost might be one of them, but also some of the red tape, even though the city has changed quite a bit of this, so I don't know.
Yeah, so he told me financing.
Okay.
Financing is the biggest hurdle, and that's, that's different. In a lot of cities, the biggest hurdle is zoning. Salt Lake City is a bit more progressive in that we allow ADUs in a more relaxed way. So the next frontier basically is financing. Can we go to the next slide? And the next slide. So just some background info on ADUs. ADUs are encouraged in the city's housing plan. It says that we should develop measures to promote its use. Let's go next. And ADUs are also encouraged on the west side. In the city's west side master plan, it says Salt Lake City should expand accessory dwelling units in the west side. Let's go next. But there's one problem that we're seeing, and that's that the geographic distribution of ADU construction is very different. So there's a lot of R1 zone land in District 5, District 6, District 7, and we're seeing a lot of ADU construction there. However, there's also a lot of single-family zone land in District 2 that's great for ADU construction, but we are not seeing as much ADU construction there. So let's go to the next slide. And so as we put together the 9-line project area, part of what we want to focus on here is ADU construction. And we think it's a perfect spot to start an ADU financing program for a number of reasons. So just like we see here on the slide, the home value is generally less than single-family homes on the east side. The household incomes are generally a little bit less. The lot sizes are generally large, so they can fit ADUs. 89% of the land area, the residential land area in this project area is zoned for single-family housing. The family sizes are generally larger here. This area has experienced redlining in the past, so people were not able to access the type of financing that others were. And then lastly, if we launch an ADU financing program in this area, then the county's tax participation in the tax increment will be higher at the end of the 5th year. So we'll get more money back by launching this program. Let's go to the next slide. And you can see in the city's redlining map that the 9-line area was significantly redlined. And so there's a number of reasons why we think this area is perfect to launch an ADU program. Those are all of them. So let's go next. There are some challenges that people are facing as they're building ADUs. Some of them are through current zoning, such as setbacks, maximum ADU sizes, height limits, conditional use permits. And I know the planning department is working on a proposal. They've got it through the planning commission, and they'll be bringing that to you all that would address basically all those concerns. The next thing that people are facing, a challenge to ADU construction, is just the cost of building these units. We've held about 13, 14 different interviews with homeowners, ADU builders, architects, talking with them about the cost nowadays, and people are paying between $100,000 and $250,000 to build an ADU. That's about how much it cost to build a single-family home a few years ago. So it's really getting up there, and the financing options are pretty limited for people. You can do a cash-out refinance, but with that you have to have significant home equity, and then same thing with a home equity line of credit. That really is only possible with significant home equity. Let's go to the next slide. And to update you on work that staff has done just in preparation for putting this program together, we have interviewed different stakeholders, from architects to builders to homeowners that are building ADUs. We've looked at different financing programs around the country. We've looked at the zoning code, different master plans. We've organized a citywide ADU task force that has planning department, RDA, public utilities, and then we are working on drafting an RFQ. Let's go to the next slide. And as we're putting together this program and the RFQ, these are some of the goals that the staff hopes to see in the ADU program, and we'd like to get your input on this later on too. We want to see in this program an increase in the supply of naturally affordable rental housing, because we know that ADUs are typically rented at more affordable rates than commercially built rentals. A lot of them are rented to friends and family at a discount. Yeah, we hope that this program will increase density in the lower density areas of the 9-line project area. We hope that this program will provide it'll give low to moderate income homeowners a way to build wealth, generational wealth that will be passed along to their children. And we hope that this will also increase neighborhood stability and keep people in their neighborhoods. Next slide. Some of the things also that we want to see in this program is we want to see it provide loans or grants to homeowners. We want to see landlord training in this so that people can rent in a good way. We want to see either attached or detached financing, on the ADUs. We want to see cost-cutting strategies, and maybe that's mass purchase of manufactured ADUs. We hope to see compliance monitoring if we deed restrict the ADUs. And then ideally, we want to see affordability also, and that could be either that we're giving loans to low-income homeowners, or it could be that we're providing deed-restricted affordable housing to low-income tenants. Let's go next slide. As we talked with the Redevelopment Advisory Committee, these are the suggestions that they gave us. They thought that we should have at least a short affordability period with ADUs that we finance. Maybe it's a year, maybe it's 5 years, just at least a short period of deed restriction. They thought we could look into utility connection subsidies. People are paying generally $10,000 to $30,000 for site work and hooking up to utilities. So they thought maybe there's a way that we can have those fees waived, or that we can pay for that.
Will you repeat that again?
The utility connection subsidy. Yeah, so generally people are paying between $10,000 and $30,000 to hook up to utilities. So that's sewer, water, electrical. And that's a mixture of fees and then the actual site work, like pipes, lines, excavation, that kind of stuff.
That's in addition to the cost of the ADU, you said $100,000 to $250,000.
That's lumped into that $100,000 to $250,000.
That's lumped into it, okay.
Yeah. They suggested we contact homeowners that are building ADUs near the 9-line project area, and so we did that. And I found 4 people who received conditional use permits, and I contacted all of them. Sadly, none of them have been able to build their ADUs yet, and a lot of that is because of cost and financing. They suggested that we keep the owner occupancy requirement as well in this program, and they suggested we look into the bulk purchase of manufactured ADUs. Let's go to the next slide.
So one moment,
Oh,
David.
did
So I am confused about if one of the suggestions is like it's owner occupied, but then we're also saying you need to rent it for a long time. So rent it to a family member or rent it, so.
So the suggestion is that the main unit or the house
It
is
gives-
owner occupied, or at least one of the two is owner occupied.
Well, isn't that in our ADU ordinance?
Yes,
So, I mean, it
Okay,
has to be.
yes.
all right, thanks.
Okay, as far as next steps, after we have this discussion with you, after we get your input, we're going to flesh out the RFQ and then publish it by the end of the year. Hopefully we'll find a partner that we can work with on this program. Maybe we'll end up doing it ourselves. It depends on what we work out. And then as we put together a program proposal, we'll bring it back to you for your discussion and for your approval. So let's go to the next slide. And this is the big question that we have for you all is we can target these loans in 2 different ways, or in both ways. One is we can target them to the homeowners. We can give the loans to low-income homeowners, moderate-income homeowners, and let them rent the ADUs at market rate. And what this does is it might open up more homeowners that are willing to build an ADU because they're not encumbered by a deed restriction. They can sell their home if they want to and walk away, and then the new buyer won't be encumbered by that. It's also a way that we can build wealth. Generally, homeowners in the 9-line project area don't have as high of home values as those on other sides of the city. So it's a way that we can help them build generational wealth. The downside to this is that the ADUs can be rented at whatever price they choose, and so it might be a high price that could be difficult for low-income renters to pay. So, or we can target these loans to low-income renters by deed restricting them. The plus side is obvious that the rents would be lower. We'd have more housing, affordable housing for low-income people. The downside is that it might cost the RDA a lot more money to do this. We'd have to put up some sort of subsidy to make it pencil. And then also we might have fewer people that are willing to take this project on because of the restrictions that come attached with it. So we'd like to get your thoughts on that. Which one of the 2 you think we should target? And then any other thoughts and input you have as we develop the RFQ for this program.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Taylor, for asking those questions. So,
Sure.
yeah, go ahead, Dugan, and then anybody else.
Thanks for the presentation and great questions and discussion. And I just wanted to start on the grant versus loan. And I'm all for a loan because we are giving that. Is it going to be like zero interest loan, very low interest rate loan, or market rate loan? I would hope that it'd be low interest because if they could get a market rate, they'd get one. And then if you had a limited amount of money, is it first come, first serve on the loan? Or in that case? So those are a couple just questions. I'm not sure if you have already thought about that or not.
Yeah, we don't have an answer to that yet, and that's because we haven't fleshed out the program yet.
Sure. Okay.
We've looked into different financing options, and that we could do a second position mortgage, we could do a home equity line of credit, a lot of things, but right now we want to look at like priorities.
Right. And so I'm kind of targeting more on the homeowner side of the house and looking at, hey, they already have equity and they're growing wealth and they bought a home and they're taking care of that. We want to help them continue that with a low interest loan or zero interest loan. And then the question would be, is it a normal mortgage where it's a 20-year loan, or is it a 10-year loan? So if it's a 20-year loan, the payment's lower, so they actually start gaining wealth earlier because they're not paying all that money out on the interest up front. And if there's not any other questions, I had one more question on the deed restriction and the market rate. The market rate is probably already slightly lower because the homeowners, if it's in the 9-line area, has a income threshold, and probably the neighborhood rent may be lower. So I think I would lean more at market rate, allowable market rate by the deed restriction, because I think the deed restriction could be cumbersome to someone who wants to do it, especially if it's English is your second language. That could just get complicated and they go, I'm not going to do that, and I just want to rent it out. So that's more the angle I'm leaning on at this point, or the questions I have.
Thank you.
Ale?
Madam Chair, I have a few questions. ADUs, I believe is a great tool for our city, and we need to expand the use. And I feel like not only the West Side, but especially the West Side has an incredible opportunity there with the space that we have. Our lots are gigantic in most cases, and it's a good opportunity to keep people in the West Side and allow people to build wealth in our communities. I want to add another thing to this idea, and you talked about the hookup cost, to utilities, $30,000-$50,000. In Denver, they've been working on for a couple of years now on working with developers that are interested in building ADUs to pre-submit their architectural designs to the city. Then just basically the city saying, okay, yeah, this one is approved, this one is approved, this one is approved, this one is some changes, then approved. That way, reducing the cost of the ADU from the beginning. So basically, if someone will go and get I want to get an ADU, let's say, I will go and pick one of the ones in there that are pre-approved if I want to save the cost. Now, if I want to make something fancy and different, then I'll probably need to get an architect to redraw it. But that could save tens of thousands of dollars in an ADU. So I believe that in the hope of reducing the cost of them, I think that's also important to me, that we are trying to streamline and maybe standardize some of the processes to get the ADUs. So I don't know how we do that, but it has been done. So I feel like we can, if Denver is doing it, I bet we can do better than that. Hopefully you don't hear me saying that. So I believe that that's a good way of reducing that. And they are pairing their program with a loan program too, similar to this in Denver. So I'm very excited to see this. I'm obviously more interested on the homeowner target because we're losing a lot of the homeowners on the West Side. Obviously interested in the other part too, but as a first try, I feel like, keeping the families that are owning houses in the west side and being able to allow them to build wealth and expand their houses. Minority houses, but people of color, you know, I cannot speak for all of them, but in general, tend to have multi-generational households. And one of the reasons for moving is because of not having the space. And then they have more space, you know, in a far away, smaller city somewhere which creates all sorts of other problems, right, by moving far away, travel times and all this. And I believe that they are the core of the community. So that's how I will approach it. But I do think that whatever way of streamlining and standardizing the process, including our permitting process to save cost and time, because time is another problem with ADUs sometimes, is important to me in addition to this loan program. So I will be very supportive of this, especially if all of this is combined in one packet. That makes sense?
Yeah,
Thank you.
totally. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of things. So the ADU menu, that's what I'm going to call that, which Alejandro just brought up. I believe, and I don't see Nick Norris in here, but I believe that from the city standpoint, we're sort of already looking at something like that. And because that has come up already from the city standpoint. And I think it's important to remember we already have an ordinance that this would have to follow, right? I mean, we have building ordinances that this program, any ADU would have to follow through that city ordinance, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's correct. And the Community and Neighborhoods Department is putting together pre-approved designs. They've been working with architects on that. And so we're collaborating all together in that citywide ADU task force on that. We hope that it'll be part of our financing program too.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I know that we've been working on the tweaking of the ADU ordinance as a city. And again, this is one of the things that have come up, right? That it's too expensive to get through the permitting. If you can walk in and like McDonald's pick which Happy Meal you want, then you can build an ADU, right? For cheaper. I am going back to the who to target, the homeowners or the home renters. And I feel like there's got to be a way to do both, where if the situation is such that, I mean, there has to be a way to do both. I believe in you as RDA that you can come up with creative solutions to solve both of those answers. And looking at the deed restriction also similarly, right? I think that one of the cons, as you pointed out, for deed restriction is that it actually could hinder intergenerational wealth. Right? If you actually have somebody that is trying to create some generational wealth here, but you're deed restricted, you're hindering any of that. So, of course, that's not what we want to do. Yet on the other side of this coin, we certainly don't want to have a bunch of very wealthy developers come in, buy up things, build ADUs, and not have it deed restricted. So then we're just creating the continued problem of gentrification, right? And so I'm wondering, and I look towards our city attorney's offices as well, how we could look at that deed restriction in a way of sort of narrowing it and creating certain circumstances where it makes sense, right? And I'm looking at this not just through an RDA program, but also from a city ordinance program, because it seems to me if we're restricting deeds just because you're coming to RDA, which I think we can, are we looking at that as a citywide ordinance? And where in District 7, we are building ADUs. Is that a place that we should have some deed restriction if we were to take this program, pilot it through RDA, create more of that? Shouldn't we maybe think about having some deed restrictions in these areas where it's unaffordable and unattainable anyway, right? So kind of looking at this in a broader scope of getting all of it, because why not have it all?
Yeah, and staff has thought about this exactly. We'd like to pilot it in the 9 line, but there's so much potential to build affordable ADUs in high opportunity zones with this, because so much of the land over there is zoned single family, and you can't do much besides ADUs. But if we could sprinkle affordable ADUs throughout these high opportunity areas, it's a great potential to increase affordability.
Dugan, or, sorry, Allison, did you have something to say? Okay.
But I can wait.
You can wait, okay, go ahead.
I was just going to mention the enforcement angle. At some point, if there's going to be deed restrictions or not, if there's going to be rent price restrictions or not, enforcement will have to play a part in that. And I think, the city is looking at enforcement on several of the housing affordability and anti-displacement policies, so that might be something to keep in mind too. It could be a cost, could end up being less of a cost, but there's going to be some cost involved.
Thank you. Back on to the loan side of the house. So we're offering maybe a or zero interest loan for the ADU. Is there a requirement that the ADU have an energy efficiency rating so that it is, I don't want the cheapest ADU put up that has really low energy efficiencies. I want a very efficient ADU put in and with a very low interest rate, because that's going to be a higher value to that homeowner for the long term.
Yeah, Lauren.
That's a great question. And actually, our new sustainable development policy would apply to this program because it's new construction. So they would have to have a design to earn energy score of 90, unless we were to bring the program to you and thought it was appropriate to waive that for some reason. But right now, they would have to be efficient the way our sustainability policy is. Okay,
and then back to this, add on to that. When we said we were going to target the low to moderate income homeowners, and you're probably trying to decide on what AMI, how to rate that. Mm-hmm. Okay.
We don't have that target
right.
yet. But
okay.
Exactly. That's how we look at it.
All right. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay. No, I think this is great. So I look forward to the RFQ.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. We're moving on to item number 4, resolutions of the Utah Performing Arts Center interlocal agreement. And at the table, we'll have Danny Walls, the RDA director, and Allison Parks, the senior city attorney. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Oh, sorry. Just going to mess up the microphone here. Allison and I are here to speak on behalf of what have been efforts by others, notably our city attorney, Katie Lewis, and your own Jen Bruno, as part of this discussion. I'm going to say it's an honor to represent them, but I really just think we drew the short straw on the assignment. But we will do our best to address the item and provide details, and happy to answer any questions to the best of our ability. So I think Allison has asked that I lead off, and then she's going to jump in and correct anything I say wrong or provide more detail to make me sound more intelligent. So the item in front of you today is essentially 2 resolutions that you will ultimately consider both as the RDA board and the city council. The reason for that, as it pertains to Eccles Theater, is because the theater itself is technically owned by the city, the RDA, and the county. And at the original creation and structure of the theater, there was a first interlocal agreement set up, an entity called the Utah Performing Arts Center Agency, or what we call UPACA. And it was anticipated that UPACA would be this joint entity between the 3 others that would manage and operate the theater. The second interlocal agreement that is part of this resolution and approval deals with what is that entity of UPACA then under contract with the county for the operation and management of the theater itself. And all of this is relevant because what we're talking about today is amending those two interlocal agreements to provide for the fact that what was originally anticipated of UPACA and that entity carrying the property and liability insurance for the theater is now instead going to be carried by the county, jointly with the city and the RDA continuing to be involved. But the county has been selected to essentially be the provider and holder of that insurance policy. The reason for that is twofold. First and foremost is what was originally the structure of UPACA has changed a little bit in terms of what this now day-to-day and ongoing structure and management of the theater is. And the second reason is because, quite simply, there's a cost savings from having the county or the city hold it rather than an independent interlocal entity carry the insurance. The first point as far as the alignment is originally when the theater was set up, it was anticipated that UPACA would also be technically the owner of the theater and would hold the asset of the theater. And since the creation of that entity and further discussions, it seemed to make more sense for all of us, city, county, and RDA, to not necessarily transfer the asset because we, primarily the RDA and even others, continue to carry the liability for the bonds and the debt service. So we felt it was more appropriate to carry this asset, split it between the three entities in a proportion that relates to what is our level and share of that debt. So our balance sheet isn't completely skewed for the entire time we own the theater. So that shift in how we looked at how to hold the asset has also now led into other conversations like this of who really should then be providing the insurance. And rather than UPACA doing it, it makes more sense since we have a vested interest as the entities to then also provide the insurance for the asset. So that is how we got here today. This is really, in that regard, kind of a housekeeping item of now just making sure that it aligns better with how we're structuring UPACA between the entities, and then also these provisions within these original agreements that called for UPACA to hold the insurance, to amend those so that we can now hold it, and it makes more sense. There's efficiencies and cost savings involved. I'm going to look at Katie, make sure I did all right with that, and turn it over to Allison to provide any details on the agreements themselves, and then I think we can answer questions.
Well, I don't have much to add, Danny. You were very thorough. Thank you. I'll just add, though, that these amendments were approved by the UPACA Board of Directors in July of this year, and that a similar briefing will be presented to the City Council to also review and potentially approve these proposed amendments. The next step after the RDA Board and City Council approving those would be for these amendments to go before the County Council for approval. Do you guys have any questions?
Go ahead.
So in sort of layman's terms, this is a way of streamlining this incredible, awesome entanglement that happened when the Eccles Theater happened, right? There's all these different entities that wanted this to happen and kind of entangled each other. And this seems to me just another way to streamline and have a clarity of roles. Yes.
I think the original idea of what the theater was, a lot of that was put in place before it was even built and then operated. And as a function now of seeing it, living it, breathing it, yes, this is an efficiency, a streamlining, and more importantly, a cost savings. So,
it's making your life easier. Great. Everybody's great. Perfect. Anybody else about this? I don't think I have any questions.
Just clarity. So the county would be paying the insurance, UPACA would be paying the county for that insurance rate, and then UPACA would be actually gaining the savings on their end. Their expenses would go down by the difference in insurance costs.
Yes.
Okay.
And that has been taken account in the budget, the UPACA budget that they approve. And as part of that, we've realized the savings. We've also made some allocations to build up kind of a rainy day trust fund and other things in anticipation of what may be a future claim. So some of the savings are going towards building that up in the short term.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Great. Well, seeing nobody else has any comment or questions, thank you, Allison. Thanks, Danny, for the information. Do we need, it's a resolution. Danny, do you need anything from us?
Yes. If there aren't any concerns by the board, you will consider this, I think, on the 18th on the City Council side. And so that's when you would take action as a City Council. If you don't have any concerns, you do have the option today to approve the resolution on the agency side. But that is at the discretion of you as a board and which hat you want to wear. And if you're not comfortable doing that, then I assume we can schedule a special meeting on the 18th for the RDA if you want to do both actions on the same day. But you could accomplish that today if you wish.
If we can get it done today, and if everybody is okay with this on the agency side, so go ahead.
Madam Chair, I move that we move forward with adopting this resolution to,
Sorry, Chris, there's two resolutions.
oh, sorry, both resolutions, so that we can authorize these contractual changes to the Utah Performing Arts Center.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Board Member Wharton, seconded by Board Member Fowler. I'm going to roll call this. Dugan?
Yes.
Hoyt?
Yes.
Wharton?
Yes.
Fowler?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. We have 2 board members absent. So passes 5-0. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to item number 5, and that is informational about the Eccles Theater Annual Report. And at the table, we have Angela Vanderwell from the Eccles Theater. She's the Eccles Theater General Manager. Matthew Castillo in Argentine Spanish, Art and Culture Division Director, and then Danny Walls, RDA Director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you introducing Matt and Angela, and I'm going to turn the bulk of the time over to them, but we assume that since we just presented an item on Eccles Theater, that many of our current council and board members have not had what was originally set up as an annual report, I think, coming from Eccles Theater, and I can't remember, Cindy, if it stopped right before COVID or because of COVID, but I know it's been a few years, and so we figured that was something we wanted to start back up, and I think the timing is perfect for that because Matt and Angela are going to provide some great information on how they kept Eccles afloat during COVID and all of the efforts that they did for that. And so we thought this was good timing, and I will turn it over to them for their presentation. Thank you.
So I have the presentation here that I believe was distributed to you all in advance. Should I share my screen or? Oh, there
Just
it
tell
is.
them to turn the
Perfect.
slides.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all so much for having us here. It's an honor to be able to present in front of you today, and thank you to Danny and the RDA staff for being such wonderful partners with the Eccles Theater project. As Danny mentioned, my name is Matt Castillo. I'm the Division Director for Salt Lake County Arts and Culture. We do a lot of cool stuff. One of our main things is operating all of the county's arts venues downtown, Capitol Theater, Abrav, Rose Wagner, and a few others. And then, of course, we're honored to operate Eccles Theater as well under the Utah Performing Arts Center Agency. And do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Angela Vanderwell, Eccles Theater General Manager.
Right. And then we can go to the next slide now. We're going to go into just a little bit more general overview of the theater than we do in most years. It has been a couple years since we've come before you, and we know there's also some new council members on the board that we want to make sure are up to speed. So this slide just gives a general overview of what we'll be covering today. Again, we have a lot of information to cover, so feel free to stop us at any time with questions, and of course, we're always happy to meet at another time to dive into any topics in more detail. So today we will cover the Eccles Theater vision and mission that comes from the interlocal. We'll also cover the structure and operational overview of the theater. Then we'll dive into financial reports and a program overview of our 3 main operating areas: Eccles Building, Eccles Site, and Arts for All. And if those terms don't mean much to you right now, we'll explain those. And then we'll end with a few slides about what's next for Eccles Theater. So with that, I'll turn it over to Angela.
Thanks, Matt. So we wanted to begin today by sharing with you our current Eccles Theater vision and mission, which drives the work that we do.
Angela,
Actually,
just say
next slide,
Yeah,
please. Thank you. Our vision, extraordinary experiences for everyone, and our mission to set the gold standard for live theatrical performing arts experiences and to foster deep and true community loyalty through offerings and programming which resonates for our entire community, is informed and driven by the interlocal entity which created Utah Performing Arts Center Agency, and it comes directly from UPAC's original project goals and success criteria. Next slide, please. All right, so now we'd like to share with you a brief overview of our ownership and management structure. The Eccles Theater is owned by Salt Lake City RDA, and Salt Lake County. Oversight is provided by UPACA, the Utah Performing Arts Center Agency. UPACA was created through an interlocal agreement between Salt Lake City RDA, and Salt Lake County. The UPACA board is comprised of 6 city appointees and 3 county appointees. And the operator, Salt Lake County Arts and Culture, is a division of the county's Community Services Department and meets with the UPACA board every other month. UPACA provides both fiduciary and advisory oversight in alignment with our operating agreement. And for those of you that aren't already familiar, we have 2 main performance spaces housed within the Eccles Theater, Delta Hall and Regent Street Black Box. Delta Performance Hall is a 2,500-seat proscenium theater and home to our 2 main presenting series, Broadway at the Eccles and Live at the Eccles popular entertainment series. Regent Street Black Box is a 176-seat performance space for new and emerging artists and can convert to an unstructured creation or social event space. Currently, Regent Street Black Box is home to 3 resident theater companies, Jack's, Sting and Honey Company, and Utah Classical Guitar. Eccles Theater also houses visual art in public spaces throughout the venue, boasts its own in-house dining, Tin Angel Restaurant at the Eccles, and our top-notch concessions operations are provided through Utah Food Services. Next slide, please. I'm going to need a little bit of water. Okay. So we wanted to take you through our operating units. Our overall budget for the Eccles Theater is separated into 3 operating units: building, site, and arts for all. These units are handled differently from a programming and financial perspective. Revenue and expenses for these spaces is generally tracked and reported separately. The building budget is driven by popular Broadway, popular entertainment, and large-scale local productions. Emphasis is placed on profit to support our other operating initiatives and dividends for key stakeholders. Our site budget, on the other hand, is focused on supporting local arts and culture in the community through accessibility for new and emerging artists, and supporting seasoned small-scale theater companies. We do this through affordable rental rates and community engagement efforts. In the next 3 sections, we're going to dive a little deeper into these 3 operating and reporting units. And before we do, I'd like to encourage you to review the financial documents that Matt's going to cover in the next few slides in detail if you have more time, or you can contact me or Matt if you have any follow-up questions.
All right, next slide. So, and then let's go and advance to the next slide. So I'll focus a little bit on Eccles Building, which, as Angela mentioned, comprises all of our operations from the 2,500-seat Delta Hall. So primarily Broadway programming, Live at the Eccles, our popular entertainment, and then other community events that we host there. We'll focus a little bit on the financials. Again, I know this is a lot of information, so happy to send over some additional financials later if you'd like to dig in a little bit more. But this report here shows 2021 actuals, 2022 budget status to date as of, with actuals as of the end of August, and then our 2023 proposed budget that was reviewed by the UPACA board in September. So I think the main thing I want to focus on here is really just talking about how grateful we are to be back to a very stable financial footing after the first couple of years of the pandemic. As you can all imagine, the Eccles Theater was very heavily impacted by the pandemic, and early in 2020 there were a lot of questions about exactly how long it would take us to recover. But fortunately, through some, I think, some creative solutions and a lot of great work by our team members and key partners in 2020, and then going into 2021 and reactivating our full capacity performances in August of 2021, we've actually been able to end 2021 with a fully balanced budget. All of our operating reserves have been refilled. We've been able to catch up on our capital reserve account contributions and back to a very stable financial position. So very excited to be able to share that news. And again, a huge relief given some of the possible scenarios we were looking at earlier on in the year. 2022 is shaping up to be another great year. Revenues right now are ahead of our initial projections, and we have a really strong fall. We're currently hosting Lion King at the Eccles Theater. We have a lot of great shows coming up through the rest of the year. So expect to end the year strong with revenue. Our budget, as far as our operating expenditures, are all going well, and so we do anticipate to have a healthy net income at the end of the year to distribute to the owners. And then 2023, again, another strong year with a balanced budget. So we're really happy to be able to report on that. Next slide. So this is our report that shows the distribution of net operating income from building operations to owners. So I won't spend a lot of time here, but this essentially goes through when we do have net income at Eccles Theater, which has been every year except for 2020 so far. This outlines how that's distributed, and this is all detailed specifically in both the owner and the operating agreement. So you'll see we had a distribution in 2021. We're anticipating another distribution in 2022. And then again in 23. So now, next slide, please.
Matthew, can you send these slides to us because they're not posted and I cannot see too far and this is not
absolutely.
working?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We'll send those out right after this meeting. So just a few highlights of operations during the pandemic, the first 2 years of the pandemic. So we did close to full capacity performances from March 2020 through August of 2021, as all theaters did to a greater or lesser extent. One of the things that we were really fortunate during those months where the theater was dark was because all Eccles employees are county employees, we were able to participate in some redeployment programs. So while our staff didn't necessarily have as much to do, some of them, while our theater was dark, we were able to redeploy a lot of our employees to pandemic response efforts and other staffing needs across the county. So we had production and ticketing staff helping with quarantine and isolation centers, helping deliver Meals on Wheels. It was really a great way to support the pandemic response and also help to offset some of the lost revenue at the theater. In 2020, the Salt Lake County contributed $450,000 to cover shortfalls after redeployment and other cost savings. So in 2020, we used the full $1 million operating reserve that we always hold, and then required an additional $450,000 from the county to balance that year's budget. In early 2021, we received a shuttered venue operating grant of over $4 million, so that was a huge boon for us. Grant program through the federal government. And so that's really, that in addition to reopening to really strong performances in the fall is what allowed us to get back onto strong financial footing. And then just a few last highlights. So of course, want to highlight the things that are, Next slide, please, thank you. In some respects, some of our employees were actually even busier than they normally are. We handled literally hundreds of thousands of ticket refunds and reschedules, working with all of the patrons. We did work to keep the theater active when possible. So we hosted several filmings with Disney. We were also really proud to present the regional presentation of the music of Andrew Lloyd Webber, produced by our partners at Magic Space Entertainment, to reduce capacity audience in March of 2021. We were the only theater in the entire world presenting Andrew Lloyd Webber. So that was a really special moment, and we worked directly with Andrew Lloyd Webber to do that. And then also another really exciting opportunity that came out of the pandemic was presenting Open Streets programming with the Blocks and the RDA, which was a great use of the theater while the Delta Hall was still dark. And then of course we continued working on key projects. So just some of the highlights of Eccles building. Next slide, please. So here are just a few pictures. This upper right is, or upper left, excuse me, is a lot of our production team delivering PPE kits and thermometers to local restaurants in 2020. You all remember the health department had a really cool initiative to help restaurants reopen. And so those are some of our staff doing that. And then some pictures of installing our automated risers at the Black Box. Next slide. So I'll pause. I know I'm going through this really quickly. Any questions before I move on to Eccles site, our next operating unit?
I only have one question just for information. That the shutter venue grants that you received, that also helped the restaurants there too, right? To stay or at least to, how did that work for the lease that they have with you guys?
So that grant was specifically for theaters, museums, and other event spaces, and it was specifically meant to offset lost revenue for that industry. So that grant itself didn't help, but I know there were many other programs. So.
But the Teen Angels still there, and they survived as well, or the other group that you have, the concessionaire, the Urban Food Utah, something like that.
Yeah. So. Yeah, we have been able to work closely with them. They didn't benefit directly from that, though most of our presenting partners did. So our residents, Broadway, Across America, Magic Space Entertainment, they did receive funding through that program. But fortunately, we've come out the other side of the closure, at least, with Tin Angels still operating and continuing to focus there, and then our concessionaire as well, Utah Food Services.
Thank you.
So next we'll talk about Eccles site, which really comprises the Regent Street Black Box Theater, McCarthy Plaza, and some other event spaces. Next slide, please. So here's some financials. I'll of course include these as well in a follow-up email. But as Angela was mentioning, this is our operating unit where we really focus on serving and helping to support local arts agencies, local arts organizations, and individual artists. We do that through low rental rates, event support, and some key strategic community engagement programming. Expenses here are supported in part through earned revenue, and then also very generous support from all of you from the Salt Lake City RDA, which helps to support those operating expenses. I won't spend too much time on this budget report, but I'll just mention that we're very pleased that through the pandemic, we did not have to request any additional money. We actually were able to come in under budget significantly because of cost savings. And then as we've reopened, we've been able to work with arts organizations and stay within that kind of approved budget. So we're excited about that. And then now I'll pass it over to Angela to talk about some of the cool things we do at Eccles site.
Thanks, Matt. Next slide, please. Okay, I get to have the exciting task of sharing with you some of the things we've been doing over the past 2 years as we've been reopening and recovering from the pandemic. So the first thing we wanted to share with you is that our highlight is our Eccles 5th Season Celebration Open House, which we held July 30th this summer. We saw a really great community turnout for this event with 350 guests. A huge hit of the day was our VIP backstage tours. We conducted these 3 times over a 4-hour period, and we also showcased our Regent Street Black Box resident theater companies, Jack's, Sting and Honey Company, and Utah Classical Guitar, and Broadway and Live, our partners, shared highlights from previous years and teasers for our upcoming 22-23 season. Next slide, please. Over the past few years, we've partnered with the Blocks and Downtown Alliance to make Eccles Theater an open streets anchor venue, with the Blocks programming events in the grand lobby at the Eccles Theater. In both 21 and 2022, we opened the Nana doors to Main Street from the grand lobby, and we successfully hosted 14 summertime events. That was 7 events each year. We saw about 750 attendees enjoy and interact with the theater directly, and many more on Flow. And then beginning in 2021, with the Delta Hall still dark to, next slide, please. With Delta Hall still dark to full capacity audiences, we work to identify local, new, and emerging artists and art forms, and in conjunction with Open Streets activity downtown, we jumped into producing and presenting our own programming. Salt Lake Speaks in the Grand Lobby and Salt Lake Beats on McCarthy Plaza. This was a huge success in both 21 and 22, especially our Salt Lake Speaks Poetry Slam, which was just a real hit with the community. We hosted slightly more than 550 patrons, most of them new to Eccles Theater over the course of the 4 engagements, and we're really looking forward to expanding our programming in 2023. And I can't advance from this slide without pausing for a moment to thank the Salt Lake City RDA for their generous contributions each year to help make these events happen. I also need to give a quick nod to our Eccles Theater staff who expanded beyond their usual roles to start producing these events in-house. Next slide, please. Visual arts is another important feature within the Eccles Theater venue. We're highly committed to ensuring that our community has access to visual art and that we are supporting local artists as much as possible. We have Salt Lake City public art all over the venue. I'm only going to highlight one because we are limited in time. But on the slide, you can see Imagine by Tracy O'Very Covey, a vinyl mural on our loading dock door on the McCarthy Plaza. We also showcase pieces from the Salt Lake County Visual Art Collection in galleries located in the North Lobby, Lower Lobby, and various other locations throughout the theater. And this work is available for the public to view without a ticket to a show daily from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Our latest permanent installation, Culture in Our Hair by Bill Lewis, which is on the left-hand side of the slide, is located in the Regent Street Black Box lobby and staircase. And annually, we host a temporary non-traditional holiday art installation and community open house event called Lights On at the Eccles Theater. Next slide, please.
All right, so now I'm going to chat about the Arts for All program, which is kind of our banner community outreach program. And I just want to pause a minute. I feel like we should have brought like a little creative outlet, like maybe a dance break or something to bring a little drama from Eccles Theater. We'll plan that for next time. So,
you have 2 more minutes. I'm so sorry.
Yep.
I'm trying to keep within the agenda. So 2 more minutes, so that if they have any questions, we can ask you. If not, we'll have to move on to
absolutely.
the next
Thank
item.
you
Sorry.
so much, Councilmember. So just quickly going through Arts for All. So this is funded through a 50% fee on all tickets to the Delta Hall. And let's go ahead and advance to the next slide really quickly. So we provide free tickets to income qualified individuals through this program, many of whom otherwise would not be able to attend events at the Eccles Theater. This slide is the budget. I won't spend much time here. It's pretty straightforward, but of course, please ask me if you have any questions. Let's go to the next slide now. Oops, excuse me. So the main way that we distribute tickets is through key partnerships. So when we first started this program, we were doing it through a lottery system. It really wasn't a great way to get tickets out. And so our Arts for All coordinator has been working really hard to develop partnerships with a lot of schools, social service providers, community organizations, nonprofit arts organizations, and so forth, which has been a great way for us to get tickets to those that are really most interested in attending. Next slide, please. So this just shows some of the numbers. In essentially the 5 years we've been operating Arts for All, 2020 was, we put the program on pause for obvious reasons, but we've distributed more than 5,600 tickets over the course of the program, which is great. Right now, we're at about 70% utilization. Our goal is to be at 80 to 90% utilization. Again, giving tickets to those that really want to come and are going to take advantage of that. Let's go to the next slide now. So this just lists a lot of our Arts for All program partners. We're always looking for new partners to get the word out, so we help appreciate any help or any references you all might have, but again, work with a lot of middle and high schools. The Other Side Academy has been a great partner for us, Pride Center and others, and there's a few quotes included here from some great feedback we've gotten from some of our partners. So in the interest of time, I'll finish up with Arts for All, and Angela can talk for a few minutes about what's next at the Eccles.
Next slide, please. And next. Okay, let's see. If you could go to the very last slide, that would be great. Next slide. Thanks. So what's next at the Eccles? Continued commitment to diverse programming to appeal to non-Broadway audiences and reflect our whole community, and an emphasis placed on working with our programming partners, Broadway Across America and Magic Space Entertainment, to bring socially relevant programming as part of each series. Targeted community engagement efforts, expanded grassroots in-house presentations, growing our visual art installation program to further support local artists, and deepening our Arts for All outreach to keep developing Eccles Theater's future audiences now through enhanced accessibility. And lastly, to support technical theater outreach and the development of theatrical production as a profession through our Adu technical outreach program for high school and university students, and our internship programs through arts and culture. Thank you so much for inviting us to come in and share all of this with you today.
Madam Chair, can I just, real quick, I know
Yeah,
we need
go
to move on,
ahead.
but Cindy also just pointed this out, but one of the very first things I believe I was ever briefed on with Eccles Theater was the Arts for All program. And it's awesome to see it growing and continuing to grow. And 5,600 tickets, it's a lot of tickets and a lot of people that get to experience the theater and the arts in ways that they may have never been able to experience before. We all know how important, especially having lost it during COVID, how important the arts are for our communities, all of our communities. And so huge, huge shout out to that program, the partnerships you've made. I know Tosa was up there. I know a lot of people have been able to take their children and experience it with their children. Again, opportunities that throughout these refugee programs, all of it, those partnerships that have been made that wouldn't have been able to have that experience before. So huge, huge shout out. It is like one of those feel goods that we like to hear every once in a while, like that more than we normally get. So
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. I just appreciate the amount of work and how you guys have been able to navigate the pandemic, in a healthy way, in a way. So thank you. Thank you for holding on, and thank you for the persistence and the creativity to make it happen. So, and this is one of the biggest assets that downtown has. So I am extremely proud of that happening in our city. So thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate
all
your
so
time
much.
here. Thanks, Danny. We're moving on to, I'm trying to catch up, Mr. Dugan. I think we're still good. We're moving on to item 6, a resolution for the bicycle collective loan. And at the table, we have Ben Latke, Danny Walls, and Tracy Tran, our senior project manager at the RDA.
I didn't know if Ben was joining us or
Yeah, it's
jumping
Ben.
in, or I was going to let him start, but if not, I'll turn it over to Tracy to jump in. And
That's okay. Yeah, go ahead and he can join us.
Okay. All right. Can I get the slides up? Okay, perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm here to present on a proposed loan modification to the bicycle collective loan. Next slide, please. So just to give a quick overview, the applicant for the loan is the Bicycle Collective, and they are looking to build the headquarters for their organization on the RDA's 901 South Gale Street property located within the Granary district. The development will be a 15,000 square foot multi-use building that will include the retail program and operation space for the organization, and the project is also adjacent to the 9-lane trail. In May, the board approved a $1,750,000 primary loan to the organization. Next slide. And then since May, they have been working towards construction. And as many of you know, construction costs have gone up. And with this particular project, it increased by $500,000. So they are here seeking an additional $500,000 from the RDA. So the total loan amount would be $2,250,000.
And also due to the volatile increase in interest rates, they are requesting to lock in their interest rate instead of waiting until the loan closes. And that requires a waiver from the board. And this will help the organization kind of manage their costs throughout the process. And the organization is working hard to start construction soon, and they anticipate construction to be complete by Q2 of 2023. Next slide. So here are just some photos of the site that you can see. The 9-lane trail was recently completed, so the organization would be just kind of located right adjacent to that new 9-lane trail. Next slide, please. And just to provide just additional background information, in 2017, through an RFP, the RDA did select the Vice Collective to negotiate the development of the property. In 2018, the RDA board approved a land write-down for the property in exchange for public benefits, and the land will eventually be conveyed to the Bicycle Collective. The public benefits associated with this project includes public amenities, transit alternatives, architecture and urban design, and sustainability. Next slide, please. And so here's just a summary of the proposed terms. The proposed loan amount is $2,250,000. The Bicycle Collective is proposing to lock in their base interest rate at the 5.66% rate instead of waiting until closing. And the interest rate reductions for the public benefits are listed here. The term would be 5 years with a 20-year AM. That means there would be a balloon payment after 5 years, and the loan would be fully paid back. And the RDA will have a first position lien on the property if anything, if it doesn't go as planned. Next slide, please. So the Finance Committee reviewed and recommended to approve this proposal. Again, the loan repayment is based on the organization's ability to fundraise, and they have been able to raise quite a bit of funds. And they do anticipate additional fundraising will come once the building is under construction. And again, the RD will have a lien on the property, so if they are unable to pay back the loan. And that's the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and I know there are representatives from the Bicycle Collective team here to answer any questions.
Does anybody have comments, questions? I know there have been some small group meetings, so where clarifications were made. But if there's anything else, no? I don't have any questions. Danny, maybe a question for. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, can you talk a little bit about why we do these loans generally and what benefit these loans have to the neighborhood as part of the overall strategy of an ADU CRA?
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Yeah, so I think the purpose of these loans is to support just smaller commercial developments that will help kind of revitalize different parts of the RDA project areas and to bring about certain public benefits to those areas. And our goal is to, when they do provide those public benefits, we allow for kind of a lower interest rate that will help these businesses get established. Anything else you would add, Danny?
I would add, I think it's important to keep in mind that this loan is being provided on top of what was the property offering to Bicycle Collective. So we offered the property, wrote that down as per the approval from the board, and then this loan is on top of that assistance to help get the project up and going. Overall, the function of these loans is to help the small businesses to provide those resources that they may or may not be able to secure through conventional financing, or to do it in a way that we can provide incentives to incorporate public benefits in the project as well. And so this, between the property disposition and the loan, is meant to provide a use and a resource to the community that may not otherwise be provided, but for our involvement in doing the project.
Sure, and why do we, when we pick the businesses that we pick, or, well, I mean, first they come and apply to us.
Mm-hmm.
And when of the people or businesses who have applied, can you talk about when we make those selections, why are those good, not just for that business, but for the neighborhood?
I think that's a function of when we do that review and analysis of those applications, we're putting that in the context of what is the overall project area plan, what are the uses that we would like to see come to the neighborhood, and then as part of our review of the specific project and the financials, what can we do as far as infusing public benefits in that to make whatever that proposed use is better and have community benefits within it. A lot of it is what we receive from people who are looking to do projects and development in the project area. So as they come to us and seek assistance or how to utilize our programs, they are already coming with a plan for the property or what their project is. And then others like this, where it's part of a land disposition, we are trying to be more impactful and target specific uses that we think could provide something that the neighborhood doesn't already have.
Okay, but any business that's in the CRA could come to the city and ask for make a proposal and explain why they believe their proposal is the best for the neighborhood, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And then we have, between that plan, how we structure our programs, what those thresholds and objectives are, and then what we decide to either provide as financing or what reductions to interest rate we provide as well. Those are in direct relation to what benefits they're providing or what goals that we've identified, you as a board for these programs, that they would match as part of just being able, basic eligibility for those programs.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Danny, you are looking, it says resolution here. Are you looking for a vote today, or are you looking?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, comments? Anybody ready to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I would move that we approve the,
Second. I second before.
there we go. Approve, period.
All right. Approve the bicycle collective loan. Okay, I have a motion by Board Director Fowler, seconded by Board Director Pui. I'm going to roll call this. Dugan?
Yes.
Pui?
Yes.
Wharton?
Yes.
Fowler?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, and we have 2 board directors absent, so that passes 5-0. Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing this
Thank you.
done and completed. Thank you so much. We're on item number 7. It's another resolution about the Granary Adaptive Reuse Loan Request for Fisher Brewing, and at the table we'll have Danny Eccles and Corinne Piazza, which is an RDA project manager.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to dive right in, and for the last presentation of the day, I have good news. It's only 3 slides, so it'll be quick. Can you go to the next slide, please? Great. So today, you're considering a request for the Granary Adaptive Reuse Program from Fisher Brewing, and it's for a $136,962 loan for an expansion project. I'll get more into the details of that project in the next slide, but to start, let's see. I wanted to provide a little bit of background on the program goals. So originally it was a pilot program, and after 2 successful loans, it became an official program with a policy and resolution in 2017. And it was established to, 1, provide forgivable loans to encourage reuse and revitalization of the Granary District's unique stock of industrial buildings, 2, to reduce financial impact of adaptive reuse and preserve existing neighborhood character, and 3, to facilitate transformative projects that increase the number of residents living, working, and visiting the Granary District. Up to $200,000 is available per project, and previous loan recipients include Atmosphere Studios, Fisher Brewing in 2016 for their grand opening, Templin Family Brewing, and Orchid Dynasty. And of note, Fisher is eligible for a second request, as this expansion is considered a new and different project than their original opening location in 2016, and their original loan was fully forgiven in July 2021 as they met all requirements. Next slide, please. All right, so on the map you can see the existing brewery is in the teal outline, and the proposed expansion is in the lime green outline to the east of that building towards 3rd West. Fisher's expansion project includes the acquisition of those properties to the east of the existing brewery, which will be adaptively reused to include an additional roughly 2,600 square feet of brewing area, 3,300 square feet of tavern space, 1,000 square feet of outdoor dining, with a total project cost of about $4.6 million. The project meets all program requirements, including that the loan will be used to convert underutilized buildings into neighborhood-oriented retail and services. Next slide, please. All right, so the program is intended to provide a forgivable loan to supplement a project's existing financing or equity contributions. And within the program, we identify eligible uses, and the applicant's required to match those funds that specifically contribute to the adaptive reuse of the building. So for this project specifically, the loan will go to help offset the cost of adaptive reuse, including construction costs associated with building code requirements, full electrical, HVAC, and plumbing upgrades, as well as a new accessible bathrooms and fire suppression system. Per the program parameters, the Fisher Brewing project is eligible, again, for the $136,962 loan to be forgiven over 5 years if all requirements are met. The terms are on the slide, and the interest rate is 0%. The term is 5 years. There's no annual repayment if all conditions are met, and principal is forgiven in equal annual installments. So in other words, we check in with the applicant on an annual basis, and if those requirements are met and we can see that those funds are being spent as indicated in our agreement, that year is forgiven, and we do that each year up to the 5 years and when the total loan would be forgiven. Currently, the program has about $1 million in it, and if this request were to be approved, there would be $882,175 remaining in the program, and those are uncommitted funds at this time. Overall, this loan request hits the program goals and supports the adaptive reuse of buildings to preserve the past while building the future in partnership with local business. And finally, we had Finance Committee review this loan request in July, and they had a unanimous recommendation for the board approval. Finally, we also have Tim Dwyer here with Fisher Brewing, and that is the presentation. If you have any questions, we can dive right in.
Thanks, Corinne. Questions? I'm excited about this. I have a comment about how long will we have this money, the leftover, and are you guys looking at doing some other ones in the area?
Yeah, so it's an ongoing program till the project area expires in roughly 2025, and the commercial program that the staff has brought and is bringing back for further review by the board, this largely would be using this model and bringing that to larger project areas. But did you have any other comments on that?
I was just going to add, I believe Granary has 3 more years left in its life, and then you as a board have adopted a policy that following the expiration, and when we stop collecting tax increment, you have a period of time of which our policy says that we have to spend the funds. So if for some reason these haven't been spent within that long period of time, I think you would see us as staff come back and propose some other use for the funds and put that before the board for consideration.
Right, but you haven't had any other interest for these funds to be used within this timeline that you guys have?
Not at this time, not in terms of anyone talking to us about submitting an application now.
Hi, Tim. I know the property owner is here, so maybe if you want to say a few words, and also you're a great ambassador for the Granary district, so make sure that people know that there's $1 million left that they can use and do great things like your business does for that neighborhood. So if you want to say a few words about how things are going or how this will help you,
Well, yeah, thank you very much for the time and for entertaining a second application that we've had into this program. The first one was very, very helpful as we were just getting off the ground. This one is going to be very, very helpful for us as we're experiencing much higher than normal costs and doing a lot of upgrades to this old building. I really, really enjoy being a part of saving the character of the Granary district. The building that we're rehabbing actually housed an old machine shop that built the parts for the original Fisher Brewing's canning line. So there's a really cool bit of a history that's tying together that we get to preserve as part of this. So thank you to the board to even consider us on this. And I do think it's a really important program to try to maintain the way the district is now as a smaller scale maker's neighborhood, and we're happy to kind of fit in that envelope, but I do think that more people should take advantage of this, and it's nice to know about the timeline requirements with the expiration of the project area in 2025. So I'm on the board of the Granary District Alliance, and I'll certainly pass that on to folks and make sure that we try to get those funds used under this program.
Thank you. Any other comments? Just one comment. I know that corner, the one that you guys taking over, it was we toured it, and we had other people interested in leasing that, but it was stuff that that they would want it to sell, or it was hard to lease, and the TI, and magically you were able to accomplish that. So I'm very excited that you acquired the property and it's actually staying, like that, and keeping the character. So good job.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we're very
for being great
fortunate, so.
neighbors.
Madam Chair, when do we take action on this? Today?
Today?
Well then, Madam Chair, I would move that we approve this loan.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Board Director Fowler, seconded by Board Director Puy. I'm going to roll call this. Dugan.
Yes.
Puy.
Yes.
Wharton.
Yes.
Fowler.
Yes.
I'm a yes. It passes 5-0. We have 2 absentees. Thank you. Thank you, Corinne. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we heard great things.
Nice.
Awesome.
Barely got it together this year.
All right, well, we are at item number 8, report and announcements from the Executive Director. No announcements. Thank you, Mayor, for being here. We welcome you. And report and announcements from RDA staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 3 quick announcements. It's, I think, entirely coincidental that they all deal with community outreach and engagement. And so appreciate if you give me a moment to talk through these. First one regards our Shovers Electronics property that you as a board authorized us to purchase. This is a property adjacent to the Folsom Corridor. You'll recall that when we brought that before you, we indicated that we were going to apply for an EPA Brownfields cleanup grant. We have developed that cleanup plan, analysis of brownfields, cleanup alternatives, I guess is the actual title. That's what I have here. So as part of that application process, though, we do make that available for public comment. So this announcement, number 1, lets everyone know that we have developed that plan. It is available in the RDA offices and on our website for review and input. And so if anyone's looking for some really exciting nighttime reading, that is available, and you can check that out. Second item is regarding the City Creek daylighting component of the larger Folsom Trail project. As I assume you know, the RDA has been working with Seven Canyons Trust to be working on what is a 3-phase outreach process for that plan. We're in that first phase, and RDA staff, along with Seven Canyons Trust, has literally been out pounding the pavement and sidewalks and going door to door in the neighborhood, posting lawn signs, managing tables on the trail, and also attending Popular Grove Community Council meeting, the Groove in the Grove. So all of this is meant to receive survey results, which will be combined with other information during phase 2, and then that will lead to development of the 2 design options for the creek and trail improvements that then, as part of phase 3, will be put out to the public for additional engagement and feedback before proposing a final design. So that is information you can find on our website or reach out to us directly. But if anyone in that neighborhood is interested in providing input on that, we are out soliciting that and trying to get as much feedback as we can. And then finally, as part of our process of revamping our commercial assistance programs, our loan programs, our adaptive reuse program, we're also reaching out to developers, stakeholders, community groups to gather information on how we as an agency can make those programs work and make sure that we are finding what our purpose is for those programs and how we can make those a little bit more attractive to use within our project areas. So this is a request to the board members that if you have any small scale developers, any community groups, anyone that we should reach out to. We have a pretty good database of what we feel are development and community contacts, but I think it's a great opportunity if there's anyone else that maybe we don't have on our list, receive that input from you as a board. So please don't hesitate to just throw them in an email and send them to us, and we'll take it from there and reach out to them. So that is all we have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Very much. Questions? Nope. All right. Thanks, Danny. I guess we don't have any we do have written briefings. And it's on one, and the consent agenda. Sorry, I'm real confused. I get confused sometimes with this ones. So the written briefings, it's informational, it's the predisposition property report at 700 West, 200 South, the sandbar. So, but I guess that's in writing. And then we're moving on to item E, the consent agenda, the motion to approve.
Madam
is
Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right. And I have a motion by Board Member Fowler, seconded by Board Member Pu. I'm going to roll call. Dugan.
Yes.
Pui.
Yes.
Wharton.
Yes.
Fowler.
Yes.
I'm a yes too, and that passes 5-0. We don't have a closed session. Nope. All right, and I guess we are adjourned. Yeah, for RDA. There you go. Thank you.
Right on time.
Wait, and we will. We will start back up at 4:05.